Hello, and welcome to my webinar on principles of periodization. My name is Maria Simone, and I am the owner and head coach of No Limits Endurance Coaching. I am a certified coach with USA Triathlon, level 2 endurance, which has been an amazing experience for me to both get the knowledge from the process as well as the continuing education. USA Triathlon has been an enormous supporter of athletes and coaches. I'm also a USA Cycling level 2 coach, and I am a level 2 accredited coach with Training Peaks. And like all of you, I am an active endurance athlete. Today, in this webinar, we're going to cover periodization, what it is and why you should do it. We're also going to talk a little bit about progressive overload and recovery within the periodized plan and how these are guiding principles to help you make decisions in your training. We're going to focus on the elements of a periodized plan and the cycles, macro, meso, micro, and nano. And then lastly, I'm going to leave you with some specific strategies for planning and organizing your athlete training planner. So first, what is periodization? A periodized plan segments your training year into targeted training cycles that do a few things. They help you focus on specific training adaptations, like improving your strength, your endurance, your speed, and the like. It also allows you to systematically plan the training load both within and across training cycles. It allows you to work optimally to your best performance at your key races and events. And I think it's worth mentioning that what is optional, what is optimal is defined based on your lifestyle and your goals. Not somebody else's lifestyle and not somebody else's goals. Your big dreams matter because they are yours. Why periodize your training? Great question. I think as a coach, my primary goal is always to help my athletes stay healthy and minimize their injury risk. This should be your number one goal as well. Periodization supports that goal by balancing a progressive overload with adequate recovery that allows the body to adapt to the training stimulus. This is a process that is known as supercompensation. Makes us like superheroes, right? A periodized plan also helps you determine realistic expectations for your goals and your achievements within a year, across a year, and maybe even for multiple years. It will also allow you to identify, organize, and plan your training such that you can work on your areas of opportunity while maximizing your strengths. I think it's really important to focus in at times on these areas of opportunity, what some might also call limiters, right? But a lot of times we might train what we like because we're good at it, but I think it's really important to also train what we're not good at to maximize those areas of opportunity. That's where your potential sits. And a periodized plan can help you identify that. So why do we train, right? Like, what are we doing? First of all, it's fun, right? It feels good. We like to be fit, all those things. But we could get that from exercising. We train because we prepare the body to race. We want to meet or exceed the demands of race day. We achieve that with training that, again, balances this concept of progressive overload with recovery. So I've mentioned this term progressive overload a few times. What exactly do I mean by that? It's when we introduce new training stress to allow for those adaptations. Again, that process that I referred to as supercompensation. We don't get fitter if we do the exact same thing all the time. We have to introduce novel training stress to the body. So for example, if you run 30 minutes this week, next week you can gradually progress that training stress by either running 35 minutes at the same intensity or 30 minutes at a somewhat higher intensity. Which approach you choose is going to lead to different training adaptations. Progressive overload should be designed in ways that are relative to you, gradual over time, and specific to the demands of race day. This idea of relativity is important. Is this your first triathlon that you're preparing for, or are you a seasoned veteran going after your 10th, 12th, 20th year of training? These are two very different approaches to adapting novel training stress. We talk about the idea of gradual, which means incremental changes each week. That example I just gave you, as simple as it may be, illustrates how we want to gradually and incrementally progress our training. We need to be very wary of big jumps because that's how we start to maximize injury risk, and we don't want to do that. So gradual is important. And then lastly, specific means to your race demands. What is the intensity of the race? How we train for a sprint or an Olympic is going to be very different than how we train for a 70.3, a 140.6, or even some double 140.6, right? 281.2 and beyond. These are all going to require different kinds of training. When we look at progressive overload, we can see that training stress is moderated by a few things: duration of the workout, frequency of training across the cycle, and intensity. When we take duration of any given workout plus frequency, that gives us our total volume. When we add intensity to that, that gives us our overall training stress. But in order to allow the body to grow stronger, we can't keep increasing these things. We have to allow adaptation through recovery. Recovery gives the body time to make adaptations to the training stress. Again, that idea of supercompensation. And always remember this: training is breaking you down, recovery makes you stronger. So if you're one of those athletes that like to resist your recovery days, your rest days, your easy days, don't. Imagine your body putting itself back together on those days. Imagine your muscles getting stronger on those days, because that's exactly what's happening. So these are the principles kind of underlying periodization. So let's talk about now some of the specifics of periodization, some tools you can use to help adapt your plan and grow as an athlete. Periodization, again, like I said, is about segments, right? And we call these cycles. We look at macro cycles, meso cycles, microcycles, and nano cycles. The macro cycle is an overview of your entire year or your season or otherwise extended period. These may be anywhere from 6 to 18 months, depending upon your particular needs. We tend to organize this large block of time into an ATP, which may stand for Athlete Training Planner or Annual Training Planner. We like to use the word we like to use Athlete Training Planner because these aren't always a discrete year, right? So the Athlete Training Planner sort of indicates that we're organizing the time period around key races, right? It allows us to see the big picture and what we want to accomplish within that broader time frame. Here is an example, also part of the template that USA Triathlon offers its coaches as well, to help organize the athlete training planner for our athletes. This is a fictional athlete named Will Wisconsin, so named because he's doing Ironman Wisconsin. But you can sort of see here, we've identified his C races. These are sort of the fun races that he wants to do, not super race specific for his key priority, but a good thing to add to the season, right? And then also he's got here a B race, more of a preparation for his primary race. So we can sort of see at a glance here what his season's going to look like. You can also see in this image that we have segmented this athlete training planner into smaller segments. The postseason here, preseason prep, general preparation, and race-specific preparation. These sections are what we might refer to as Meso Cycles. The Meso cycle is a relatively shorter block of training, and I say shorter compared to the macro cycle. It's still a pretty big cycle of training, and it has within it a series of broad interrelated goals for training adaptation. In other words, what do we want the body to get better at the end of this period? And these Meso cycles may be anywhere from 2 to 16 weeks, depending upon, again, the athlete and the race demands. And what you're trying to achieve in any given Meso cycle, so again, just to go back here, what we're trying to achieve in postseason, preseason, general prep, race-specific prep is going to depend upon where you are in that macro cycle, as well as your experience as an athlete, both in the current season as well as previous seasons, as well as the totality of your athletic history. The closer and closer you get to race day, the more race specific the training gets. The different kinds of goals we might be trying to accomplish might have something to do with your endurance, your skills, your neuromuscular coordination, your lactate threshold, whatever it might be. It's going to be appropriate to you and where you are. The microcycle. This is the sweet deets, right? So these are the details of your workouts. This is kind of what maybe a standard training plan is going to look like. The microcycle is targeted planning within a meso block that is designed to meet a part of the goals for that meso cycle. They generally last anywhere from 4 to 14 days, again, relative to the athlete. The 7-day cycle is pretty traditional, and that's typically because of our standard work week. It's not really something about how the body works so much as we tend to have 5-day work weeks, 2 days off. Not everybody, of course, but that tends to be a traditional work week. But it's not the only way to organize a microcycle. So if your schedule's a little different, if you're a little younger, a little older, a little newer, a little more experienced, you may play around with the duration of these microcycles. It's also important to note that the rhythm of this cycle absolutely matters. The order of the workouts in any given week or any given cycle makes a difference for the balance between that progressive overload and that recovery. So you can see in this sample week here, you may notice there are no actual swim workouts. This was written during the time of pool closings. So we have obviously some dry land workouts there, some swim cord workouts, but this is a hard day. This is an easier day. This is a hard day. This is an easier day. Here we have 2 back-to-back hard days. Pretty traditional 7-day cycle for someone with a 5-day work week and they have their weekends off. Yours may look different, but if any one of these days gets shifted around, you're actually changing that balance between progressive overload and recovery. We don't want that. And then lastly, we've got the Nano cycle. This is the specific workout. This is what you're doing on any given day. The specific workouts that have a clearly and usually singular focus to bring about a given training adaptation. Every workout in a periodized plan has a purpose. It's trying to achieve something. So it's really important when you are following your training to make sure that you stick to the training targets, both volume and intensity, or I should say duration and intensity. When you do this, you maximize the purpose of that workout. For this particular athlete, this is a workout that we designed for her as she was getting back into some higher intensity running. So again, it is relative to her, it is gradual to where she's been previously, and it's working towards some of the demands of her race day. Now that we have an understanding of the underlying principles for periodized planning, the cycles, progressive overload, recovery, let's look at how you can organize your training plan. As you do this, I want you to keep in mind the principle of specificity, which has a few things that it wants you to consider. You must specifically train the area that you want adaptations to occur. And as you get closer and closer to your race day, you want to make sure that the training is designed to meet those demands. So I'm going to run through some of the general blocks of training that I discussed earlier, the preseason, general prep, and so on. So as we look at your preseason, this, depending upon when your A race is, maybe in the early winter, later winter, as you're getting ready for some of your summer racing, right? Your key summer racing. During the preseason, we're preparing the body and the mind for the more focused training to come that comes in the general prep and race specific prep. It's a great time to work on your skills as well as some non-race specific areas of opportunity that's going to allow you to be a more well-rounded athlete. The broader your foundation, the bigger the building you can build. We think it's important as well to keep a frequency of movement, if not a long duration of movement, but regular daily movement in order to reduce the stress of the more specific training that's going to come later in the season. There are a lot of benefits to year-round movement, not just as athletes, but as healthy humans. Again, #1 goal, let's be healthy humans, right? In some of the research, we've seen that year-round movement can reduce injury risk when the season comes because you're not falling into a cycle where you become severely detrained from doing nothing pretty much. And then you spend a good portion of your preseason trying to catch up and maybe loading too much volume, loading too much intensity in ways that are not gradual and relative to you. This period of preseason may be about 4 to 12 weeks, depending upon where you are and what what your experience was prior. But it is important that during preseason, you're not working on like highly structured training, right? If you're doing really super structured stuff in the preseason, you can wind up being burnt out or worse, suffering from overtraining syndrome. In the general preparation phase, we're going to move into more structured training. Depending upon the type of periodization plan you're using, this may be a period of endurance base building. In fact, general preparation is frequently referred to as base period, although that phrase has with it a few assumptions that this is a time of building volume, which it may be. But there's other things you can do in general preparation as well. So for some, it may mean that we're working on endurance base building. For others, it may be a time where you're working on anaerobic capacity, you're working on strength. And again, this is going to be relative to you and your goals as an athlete. During this period, training becomes structured. It focuses on subtle adaptations that are going to maximize your limiters, right? Or they're going to help you build on those areas of opportunity. And you're going to find that you're getting more and more prepared for the more race-specific training to come. It may last anywhere from 8 to 16 weeks. And I really want to emphasize, I'm giving you guys like time periods here, but it's going to be very specific to you. It's hard for me to talk in these broad generalizations because I know when I work with my athletes, I could give you exceptions to all of these rules, right? Depending on the specificity of the athlete. So you really have to kind of think through who you are, what your history is, and what you're trying to accomplish. But these are certainly generalities that kind of work for most athletes. In the specific preparation phase, it's beginning to look a lot more like racing now. During this period, each week gets progressively more race specific. We're looking at increasingly more structured workouts, with some exceptions, of course, for mental and physical relief. Not every day can be hard, not every day can be race day, nor should it be. We'll have an increased emphasis on making big day sessions more like race day. So maybe you're doing more swim to bike bricks. Maybe you're doing more bike to run bricks. Maybe you're also having some dress rehearsal days where you do a swim, bike, and a run. Now, granted, not at your race distances and not all at your race intensity, but you're kind of doing little run-throughs to get used to what the demands of race day will be like. During this period, you are working hard to maximize your fitness. And that fitness is relative to race day, whether you're looking at higher intensity events like sprints and Olympics, or whether you're looking at more muscular endurance or endurance events like 70.3s and 140.6s and beyond. Because you're working to maximize fitness, you're not going to feel particularly fresh all the time during this race specific phase. So you need to make sure that you're ensuring adequate recovery to limit your injury risk and to make sure that you can get up each day and do it again. Consistency is super important as in training. So make sure that you're getting good sleep, you're having recovery days, you're having easy days interspersed between these harder race-specific days. Specific preparation phase may last anywhere from 6 to 14 weeks, again, relative to the race demands and your race history. Here we are. Peak period, also known as taper. We prefer to use the word peak because it adequately addresses what you're doing. You're working to your peak. You're working to that optimal performance. Again, optimal as defined by you. Peak period is a time where you come into form, which is a combination of both your fitness and your freshness. You want to shed fatigue without losing too much fitness. It is a delicate balance. And the nature is basically, again, you guessed it, dependent upon you and the race. So this may last anywhere between 3 to 21 days. And again, the goal here is to have you at optimal fitness and freshness. Ah, you did it. You rocked your A race. You made it. Your big dreams are now a reality. It is time to rest. It is time to recover. So while during the training year, you had recovery days, rest days, postseason is a time for deep, extended recovery. It is time to drop the structure and have some fun again. For our athletes, after their biggest race of the year, we like to schedule in what we call a do what you want week. And we might give anywhere from 1 to 2 of these do what you want weeks, again, depending upon what the training load has been. This is completely unstructured training. We encourage you to do some fun stuff, maybe things that aren't even swimming, biking, or running. Amazing thought, I know. We think that yoga and a social life are highly recommended during this time because once your training gets started for the following season, some of those things go by the wayside. This postseason period may last anywhere from 2 to 6 weeks, depending upon what you need. Especially, it may also be extended if there are any sort of injuries that you've been working through. It's a good time to get the body and mind right. In some ways, you can see the postseason as similar to preseason, and it may look similar in terms of the kinds of workouts you do. But what's different is that in postseason, our focus is on recovery. Our focus is on really making sure the body puts itself back together. In preseason, we are recovered. So in preseason, the focus is a little bit more about building and preparing for what's to come, even if in practice they look kind of similar. In terms of planning your season and your cycles, I think it's really important that you pick experiences that are appropriate for you. When you're looking at races that you want to do, think about those that suit you. For example, if you are an athlete with competitive goals to qualify for age group nationals, to qualify for various world championships, then you want to make sure that you pick races that suit your strengths, right? On the other side, you also want to pick races that you think are going to be fun. Fun matters. This is why we do this, right? We ultimately want to enjoy ourselves. So think about something that's going to spark excitement. So maybe you pick something that's outside of your comfort zone for whatever reason, in whatever way. Whatever you do, make sure it's appropriate for you and it makes you excited and happy. Then you want to think about planning around your goals as they relate to those race experiences. You can also think beyond this season. What might be a 2-year goal, a 3-year goal, a 5-year goal? As you plan your training, think about what are your areas of opportunity? Where could you use some growth? Target that, focus that in your plan. Also, don't forget about your strengths. You want to maximize them. You want to make sure that if you're a good cyclist, you stay a good cyclist, right? But you don't want to ignore swimming if that's an area of opportunity. Keep in mind always that racing well requires progressively overloading in training and recovery. So if you are racing every weekend, you are not necessarily setting yourself up to race well. So keep that in mind when you plan your season as well, that the spacing between your races matters. Takeaways, at least what I hope you're going to take away from today, is that periodization allows for systematic planning of your training stress, both across the year or the season, as well as within the specific meso, micro, and nano cycles. It allows you to see how you can address areas of opportunity while maximizing your strengths. It's an outline of growth for you. Periodization allows you to stay healthy and minimize injury. This allows you to remain consistent in your training, which is a #1 predictor of your success. It also helps you determine expectations. What can you reasonably do in 2 months, 6 months, a year? And it allows you ultimately to plan your training to ensure that you're maximizing your potential, whatever that means for you. Thank you so much for your time today. I hope that this was informative and provided you with some tools to enhance your training. If you have questions, please feel free to email me at maria@nolimitendurance.com. And if you would like additional training resources, related not only to periodization, but to a wide array of training topics, please visit nolimitendurance.com/articles. Again, thank you for your time. Train happy, train strong, and as always, train with gratitude.